Okay, I think it's starting.
Okay, well,
Okay, Andy, you can start if you want. If you want to share your screen, you can. Maybe we start with the welcoming and so on. I'll let you do.
okay. So I'm just beginning to share my screen. So welcome to the last afternoon, everybody. We're going to start with the first hour of feedback and debrief for the exercise and the results, and then go to what in effect would be the closing ceremony before going to the restaurant by the beach to have a nice meal together. I'm convening myself, so I can give myself as much time as I want. I'll begin by...
I'm still here as a moderator, Andy.
Oh, okay. I've still got a boss. So what we're going to do in the next hour, is my screen share working?
Yes.
Good.
Yes, I'm good. Big, maybe.
Sorry?
Can you put big screen? Yeah, full screen here.
There you are. So I'm going to start with 5 minutes of just reminding us of why going through why we set up the philosophy and idea behind the design and implementation of this expert elicitation. Then I'm going to hand over to Alessandro, who's going to go through the initial results. It was almost too successful. We had a great quantity of players, a great quantity of very high quality data. So the results that Alessandro is going to show us are exceedingly preliminary because there's just an awful lot still to do with them. But we really need to thank Alessandro, Andrea, and Julie, who I don't think have slept for the last 2 days because they've been busily going through the data and setting up the software. So thanks, Stacks guys. Especially Julie, who's also in parallel been working on the Eurovolc questionnaires that we'll come to at the end of this session. So the philosophy, the design objectives was basically to evolve the expert elicitation method to apply it to a fully virtual platform where each player is on his or her own, and to develop a way of interacting in that manner, and also to launch it in a crisis response mode that is, we're working as the crisis evolves, following the crisis under pressure. From a local perspective, we wanted to test it on an eruption for which we have no experience or data on Piton de la Fournaise, that being one beyond the enclave, beyond the caldera. And let me get the pointer working here. Oh, no, not Stilet, I want the pointer. Oriel noticed straight away in phase 2 that the seismic locations, the tremor source, was off the map. So we were outside the caldera already and up to the northeast here. So we were opening a rather out of the box event, if you like. We wanted it to be a higher fusion rate event, and we used the character of the 2007 event, which was pretty much an effusion rate of greater than or equal to 200 cubic meters per second for almost 3 weeks. It didn't really drop below 200 cubic meters per second during those 3 weeks. And the flow front velocities we were giving you were, again, those in the opening phase of that eruption. We had a vent opening from a possible location. Historic vents do exist in the zone that we opened in, so the event is not impossible. And crucially, the event opened in a populated area and then descended through urban areas and critical infrastructure. And we wanted to run it in crisis response mode, so we needed a tired audience. So we tired you out first by the seed questions, by stressing you with a number of quite hard questions in a finite amount of time to set you up for being exhausted before we started. And then the events came at you really fast as the situation evolved rapidly and you had to respond rapidly. And we finally wanted to feed you the observatory style reports to test whether the material that we typically distribute for use in decision making by scientists and civil protection was useful and helpful in quickly assessing the crucial what, where, when. So the scenario, here it was, we opened the event in just above a town called Plan des Palmistes. Its population is 6,157 people. You see there are vents above the town. There's this Piton des Sanges here. So we opened a new vent just to the north of that, which would send lava down into these ravines that cut through the town. The locations for the initial questions were selected on purpose because location B here is critical infrastructure because that's the civil protection base in the town. And location A here, that's the lower slope edge of the town. So the time needed for the lava to move from the vent to location A is basically the time needed for the entire town to be inundated. So that's the amount of time we'd need to evacuate the area after opening of the event here. Auriel ran the simulation after completing the elicitation. This was the result. Of course, the line of steepest descent follows the deep ravine that cuts down through the steeper slopes to this first blue arrow here. And then the flow lines spread out onto the flatter land towards the coast, setting up an ocean entry just here. At greater than 200 meters per second, we can just about obtain the coast, but the rate of flow front advance begins to slow down as it gets to the flatter land here, but it's really quite easy to push the flow at even quite lower fusion rates down through this upper section of the simulation. We carried out a second simulation, as Sonia pointed out this morning. Tube roofs can form. That reduces the heat losses and thereby increases the run out for any given fusion rate. And again, that did happen in 2007. Tubes formed all the way to the ocean. And once you do that, you can get the lava to the ocean at 35 cubic meters per second. So 200 cubic meters per second quite easily gets the lava to the ocean through 1, 2, 3, 4 centers of population. So with that, I'll hand over to Alessandro to give you a debrief on the initial analysis of the results. So I'll stop the screen share and
I can add, Andy, just before I can add that the simulations were done based on what I usually use for typical Piton de la Fournaise eruptions. So I didn't change the settings nor calibrated downflow growth for enclos eruption, for outside the enclos eruption. So yeah, it was just to mention that. That's it.
Yeah, the rheological model should hold well. It might just be necessary to reinitialize it if, for example, it's particularly crystal rich, like the 2007 eruption was. So that would require Lucia to do a quick analysis on the texture and send us as quickly as possible the crystal content and the vesicularity. And Alessandro.
Yep, okay. I hope you can all see my screen. So first of all, yes, I would like Andy, would like to first of all thanks all the people who participated. We've had a total of 27 participants who actually sent their questionnaires, so which is a very, very good number. For me personally, the highest number of people who have participated in an elicitation for my low experience. So as Andy said, I'm going to show you the preliminary results over which we have worked a lot with Julie and Andrea, which I would like really to thank warmly for having helped me in inserting the data that all of you sent us over the past days, and discussed with me and with Andy these preliminary results. So before starting, I think it's important to highlight the group composition that participated in this elicitation, because as I pointed out in my presentation, one of the critical points that gives strength to an elicitation is to have a fairly well-distributed group composition from the point of view of experience, provenance, but also experience. And so here, thanks to the hard work of Julie, we can show you the composition of the groups. The thing that I would like to point out is that, especially from the point of view of the different ages, we have a fairly well-distributed group composition from both young researchers up to more experienced researchers, which is also reflected in the years of relevant experience in the domain of volcanology, with a median value of 12 years of experience, which fairly well divides people with a great experience with people with an early career stage. We have we have a prevalence of participants coming from the university, but we do have also a good representation of civil protection officers, volcano observatory staff, and other, meaning postdoc researchers or things like that. Of course, exactly half of the participants are from France or work currently in France, but we do have a very well group of people coming from other countries that surely added something to this exercise. And of course, as I said, it is important also to see the level of expertise, both in dealing with a volcanic crisis, the number of volcanic crises which people have been involved with, and the level of current knowledge of Piton de la Fournaise. And for all of these three indicators, you can see that there's a quite high variation of experiences. And it is important to point out this because, as I said during my talk at the beginning, for sure, it is important that for a specific problem, the majority of the people had a very good experience on the area under investigation. But it is also important to have people that maybe have worked less in the area, because sometimes, as you might have seen, a person who has not worked for ages in a specific area might see things from a different perspective and point out something that maybe a researcher or someone who has worked for many years doesn't think, but simply because he knows very well a specific activity and the specific area. So it is. I just wanted to highlight this because the composition of the group who participated is a key factor in giving strength to the results of an elicitation. Then I would just point out something related to the very famous test questions, which I know that caused for some people some troubles, even family problems. So because of course, especially for question test number B, there have been some ambiguities, of course, in the formulation of the question, which led to some very different results. And I would say that it is indeed interesting to see this thing, and we think we probably might use partially this data because, especially for question A and C, We do see that there's a quite, especially for question A, there's a quite agreement among the experts. But also you can see that even for this question, there have been some experts who thought a bit differently with respect to the groups. And as well as for question C, who was asked the level of uncertainty to say that something is unsure. So we can range from experts that gave almost from 1 to 100, but also people that were much more confident in the sense that their level of uncertainty was narrower. And for question test B, as I said, the striking thing is that there's a clearly distinct way of interpreting this question that was ambiguous. And I think it's probably this, we probably, of course, won't use this one, but a way to use this question in a way is to see how people that interpreted this ambiguous question from the two school of thoughts, if there's a positive correlation in the interpretation of the seed question. So this is something that we might test eventually. So concerning the weight,
yeah, there's a question from Oriel, and
yes.
I see Stefano Cioli's just posted a question in the discussion as well.
Yes.
Yeah, it made me think when I read Stefano, and I also wanted to ask this.
Yes.
Why those test questions were so complicated to understand? Was it in purpose or not? Because it was not clear.
Yeah, so
for
they
me, it took me really a way to understand certainty, uncertainty, weight not keeping the same. I don't know. Was it on purpose or not?
No, because we tried to translate in numbers the perception of each person on the level of certainty of uncertainty. But as you have seen, you know, setting up very clear questions is not an easy task. So it wasn't made on purpose. So when we discussed among us, for us, it seemed clear. But I would say that it's a fairly normal thing that happened in all the elicitation, that you do a lot of questions and there are some of them who are more ambiguous. And you will see after.
The test questions were much more difficult to understand than the questions during the questionnaire.
Yeah. Yeah,
in the main phases, it was easy, but the test questions, it really twisted my mind.
Yeah, that's one good problem that I've identified straight away, because this was a new test, and those test questions were actually taken from a study by Sink et al. In 1995. Questionnaire to try and assess the layperson's perception of uncertainties, both qualitatively given and quantitatively given. And it's plain that the questions that they were asking back in 1995 aren't translating well or being understood well. So we've got to have a very hard look at that and redesign those questions to make them better and to reduce the confusion, because they plainly didn't work. So we, as the organizers, are with you as the victims in agreeing that didn't work at all. So sorry about that, but it doesn't seem to have affected the following results that came out of that.
No, definitely not. I think it has been a good test even for us and for anyone to get a little bit more accustomed to dealing with uncertainties and percentages, of course. That was the initial idea. But yeah, probably in the future, if we will do something similar, we should take advantage of this experience to design it in a more clear way. So, but as Andy correctly said, that these were not related to the following seed questions. So to move on, now with these slides, I'm gonna show you the results. So I'm showing you two different ways of weighting the experts. So the first one is according to the classical model, which basically scores each expert according to the two scores that I showed you on Monday's presentation, which are the calibration and the formativeness score. To remind you, calibration is the amount of questions for which each expert actually captured the true value with the uncertainty range, and the informativeness is the width of the uncertainty range is provided. And so for the classical model, normally what is done is that these scores are then translated to weight assigned to each expert. And normally it is chosen by the analyst a cutoff threshold, normally 1%, basically because below 1% weight for each expert, the effect that the answer of that expert adds to the whole final results do not influence too much the final result. But because excluding or not really considering formally an expert might be a bit extreme, I'm going to show you also what are the results if we consider all the experts with the equal weight. So basically assigning each expert the same weight to see if there are very big differences among the results of these two scoring methods, basically to see if the group ideas highlighted by the best performing experts reflects or is totally different with respect to the whole group. And so this is a way to normally to analyze the data. So one thing here that I would like to point is that for the analysis, the initial analysis, among the 27 experts, 6 of them actually got a weight higher than 1%. And the good thing of this exercise, which I would like to point out, which is not very common, I have to say, that we had so one participant in particular who got who's clearly dominant, but the rest of the participants, the weights are very well distributed. So that's, I would say, a good situation for an expert elicitation, because normally sometimes it could happen that one expert got like 80% and the other very few. While in this case, the resulting results are much more depending on all the experts. So I would like just to point out very briefly something.
Alessandro?
Yes?
Quick question that I can't answer in the conversation over here.
Yes.
Why, on the last slide, you said we had 27 participants, but we've got 31 experts listed?
Yeah, this is just a very stupid thing in the sense that initially we've had some people who sent us their demographic sheets, but didn't participate. So in the program where we put all the experts, we were 31. But then we have just excluded the experts who didn't send us their questionnaires. So the numbering is from 1 to 31, but there are 27 in total. So this is just an ID. It's not, doesn't reflect the number of the actual number, which is 27. That's
okay. So 4 experts there actually contain null data.
Yes, because initially they were supposed to participate, but then from one reason or the other, they were not able to participate. So we just excluded them from the software.
Thanks loads.
Yeah, no problem. So I'm gonna show you, so concerning the seed question, I'm gonna focus on few of them, not all of them. Starting from a question that I think the group responded in a very good way, which is the question about the average duration of single effusive eruption at Piton de la Fournaise in hours. This allows me also to say one thing that if you have noticed that in many questions, and we have asked it to you, to indicate on your own the unit of length or time used. That was because we didn't want to drive you toward a specific answer. So we let you think about your own order. And then so we had to translate, of course, your answer into a single unit. Here is hours. So here, for example, you can see that the uncertainty range is provided by most of the experts actually captured the true values. There are some, I would like also to point out that those in the red boxes are the experts that from the initial idea were taken into consideration. And here you can see these black bars here. The first one is the bar that reflects the group uncertainty if we consider only the 6 experts. And this is the group bar if we consider the expert with the same weight. And you will see that sometimes we have with the global, with the classical model, an uncertainty range higher, sometimes is lower. And this is something that should be discussed. And these squared boxes are the median values, which are important as well, because the key thing of this analysis is that we're not providing a symmetric uncertainty range, but a more complex uncertainty range in which from this square up to the other circle, there's 50% from one side and the other. So the probability, the answer is concentrated half and half in these 2 parts. And this has, of course, a big influence on the results. So this question is a good one, one where the expert well responded. While instead, if we move to another question, there was the second question, the distance between OVPF and Paris. So I would say that this question represents a fairly good response from the group, but it is important to highlight here that maybe here it was written ambiguously, or some people misinterpreted it, but there are 2 experts who actually provided out of scale values with respect to the others. And this, of course, might be due to some ambiguities, but I would like to highlight that the fact that we have these 2 experts, this is has a direct influence on the uncertainty ranges if we consider all the experts, while instead it is different if we consider only the 6 experts that are less likely to be wrong in a possible real case. So instead here, this is a classic case in which there probably have been some ambiguities in the way the question was designed. So this was the question about the average volume of lava emitted during a single effusive eruption. And here you can see clearly that there are some experts, there are really, I would say, even 3 different schools of thoughts. So some experts who gave very low values, and this might be also due to the fact that they were thinking in a specific scale that they didn't specify, while others found very, very close to the real values, and some of them even higher. So for this specific case, if there is a situation like this, maybe the analyst or the analysts might see as a post-processing the thing of excluding a question, because if there's a clear misunderstanding of this question, this could have biased all the future results. So it's a normal procedure, and you will see after, to exclude some seed question in the analysis. Or, for example, this is also the case. So this was the last question, the longest lava tube known on Earth in kilometers, in which in this case it was probably a very hard question, and maybe it was more loosely related to the problem under investigation. And so for this case, also this question might be excluded. Considering this, we have also thought about excluding the 2 answers, the 2 questions that we were saying. And you see that if we are in fact excluding these 2 answers, which have been biased by ambiguities or are less interesting for the problem, we have, according to the classical model, we have still a higher number of experts that are considered. So because we jump from 6 up to 10, which is, I would say, even better, because it can capture even more accurately the group's idea about a specific question. So the following results about the target question are actually we're considering excluding the two seed questions that I saw. So if we look closely at the three different phases, for example, the target question for phase one, there were the three questions which were all probabilities. And the thing that I would like to point out here is that these were, I realized that there were questions for which the answer was not really easy to answer. Also considering the fact that there have not been a possibility to interact one with each other, as Nicholas was pointing out yesterday. So in this case, the group uncertainty is very, very variable for considering these three percentage probabilities. But you can see here what is important, that you might have seen it even before, that there's a clear difference between experts who are providing a very or a large or a fairly large or a normal range of uncertainty, and experts who are providing a very narrow degree of uncertainty from both sides. So from 0 to 20 up to 80 to 100. So this question has probably led many experts to be probably a bit in difficulties, because I can imagine that giving an answer is not an easy task. And so for this reason, you can see here that both the uncertainty ranges for both the equal weights, so for the whole group, but also for considering just the classical model, they are not that different. So they express a very group uncertainty about this question. And so for these three questions, that's a clear case in which you can see that selecting some experts does not really change the results. So in this way, it is fair even to consider the experts that performed better. So if we move instead to phase two, here we had the questions that were related to the final length of the main eruptive fissure, the TIDR at 130, and how long is the eruption expected to continue for. And again, here the group uncertainty it could be probably less large than the previous ones. But again, here you can see that this wide group expressed very, very different confidence interval. Probably some experts have been what they were thinking maybe about the different situations, that their experiences. But I think that this is important because, as Andy pointed out at the beginning, we are facing here an event that is not common. So thinking out of the normal schemes might be useful in this, from this point of view. And this is a case, for example, in which there's the opposite situation. So the equal weight rule gives you an uncertainty range which is lower than the global weight one. But because here, for example, expert 20 is the one who is considered as given a very wide uncertainty range. And so for but here, for example, is the opposite. And also while instead for the continuation of the eruption is we have a pretty similar situation from the two scoring methods. So if we move quickly to the other two phases, here is for phase 3, where we were asking the expected time to reach location A in the lava flow with location B, and the ballistic maximum impact distance from vent location. Again, here we can see that for two questions, the group, the results with the classical model do not differ dramatically if we consider the whole group. While instead here for lava flow with location, there's of course a difference that should be discussed by the analysts. So finally, phase 4 Again, here we are dealing both with probabilities, but also with other values like time and how long will it take the lava to reach location C. And again, here we can see that when we are dealing with probabilities, there's of course a higher degree of uncertainty expressed by the group. But again, here, what is important to point out to me is that this result is not given by the fact that all the experts give a wide uncertainty range, but that experts have given, so the results is given by experts who gave uncertainty intervals, which are uncorrelated one from the another. So in this case, probably this is one of the cases where the group experience add something to the final decision maker. Then we will have, of course, time to discuss, and for more questions, I would just like to finish out with just two more slides. One is that summarizes some of the lessons that me, but also the other who helped me learned from this experience. So for sure, the biggest challenge was that it has been a virtual elicitation, so there have been many logistical challenges for both you participants and us analysts. So some of them have been pointed out during these days. So for example, the first day Ben pointed out the problem, which is true, about the fact that we should find a way more practical, a format to be filled by the participant, which is also reflected by the fact that the format that the participant could fill should be inserted very quickly in the software that we use for analysis. But in this case, it is important to point out that we need to take care of the confidentiality. So we need to find a way in which each participant has its own format that will not be seen by the others. So this will add a bit more complexities. Then another problem that were raised by Nicholas yesterday is the fact that in this case, of course, people were not able to interact and maybe to discuss with other peoples and to have a more informed reasoning for giving their answers. And well, this is the problem of having a virtual workshop, is that we have many very good presentations, but of course it is invaluable to have the possibility to have to see in person the study area and to have a possibility to interact with other people. One thing that we will for sure do is to do some more sensitivity analysis, as I said at the beginning, to see if there have been some there are some patterns related to the group composition, maybe in conjunction with the test questions that we have seen at the beginning. So I will just leave this before passing back to Andy. There's some questions that we might animate the discussion if we have time. So first of all, if anyone has had other experiences of expert elicitation that would like to share with us, that compared or contrasted with the present one, that would be a very, very good reference for all of us. Then an important thing that relates mostly from the civil protection side, but also for the scientists, is that if the information provided were complete and understandable and how could be improved. And if the data presented in this format with these uncertainty bounds are comprehensible, first of all, if they are useful, if they need to be presented in a different way, and if there were any other questions for each phase that should have been asked to help with the solution for what, where, and when. And finally, if there were any other reason that made this a particularly difficult exercise to complete, even for the on-site experts, apart from what we have already said. So I think I'll stop here and back to you, Andy, and then maybe question times.
Yeah, I see there are a few questions in the discussion that we maybe didn't keep up with, and a couple of good comments. And I see Lucia's got her hand in the air. So Lucia.
Yeah. So first of all, thanks a lot. I just wanted to tell everyone that we started the chrono for the petrological monitoring. We just received the samples for Peter de la Fornesse. Great job, Aline and Andrea. And so I am in the lab doing I put everything in the oven. But okay, I wanted to say that first, I'm glad that Oriel pointed out that the first three questions, the test questions, were difficult because I was going to divorce from Andy. I told Andy I can't apply for that. I didn't understand anything.
Sorry for that. That was not the intention.
No, that was the second thing is, as I told you already, Alessandro, for me, it was difficult to understand the elicitation itself, the exercise. Sorry, I'm not able to say this word. That means that I didn't understand the meaning of the fifth and the 95, or well, I always look at that as I do for me grain size analysis. Probably I was wrong, I don't know. I know that is a distribution, but I was confused. So this is why, but I really enjoy not the first questionnaire that it seems to be at the lycée, at the at the high school. I enjoy the exercise, the real exercise. At that, I really enjoy it. But yes, it's true that we missed not to be in little groups and be able to discuss, of course. To do it on our own was a little bit sad because in reality, in real life, rarely you are all on your own. But it was very great indeed. So these are the things I wanted to say.
Yeah. Now regarding, just to point out the seed questionnaire, yeah, probably the time, as Andy said, we wanted to push you to be tired, to simulate a real situation. I would say that normally a seed questionnaire, if this would like to be used for a real case in an emergency, probably should be done in advance. So experts are already calibrated. So then once the crisis arrives, then maybe some predetermined questions that should be discussed with civil protection should be released and leave space for discussion. But yeah, I agree. So this is a problem that happens very often. I mean, that's why, as Willie Aspinall always says, writing a question is an art, because every word could mean something different to any participant. So it's something that normal, and that's why we debrief many times. We exclude some questions. We want to know the feedbacks because there's always space for improvements.
Can I give Stefano Cioli the opportunity to ask a few questions?
Yes, thank you. Well, first of all, I would like to make my compliments because it was really interesting, and also the results are interesting again. I have a couple of comments and maybe questions. The first thing is that it's quite strange that you ask the same questions to scientists and to decision makers. The questions you ask usually are meant to be asked to scientists. So it would be interesting to, if you make this analysis, to see the differences in the answers given by scientists and civil protection. I don't know if you already have
yeah, no, that's
kind of result.
That's for sure something that we want to do, because
okay, let us know, because
no. And of course it's true. We wanted to do since the beginning 2 separate questionnaires, but you know, then this pandemic.
Another additional analysis could be done by country, so just to see if different cultural background or experience. I mean. And last but not least, would be really interesting to feed the civil protection, especially local civil protection, Marignan civil protection, with the answers, with the results of these elicitations, to see whether these results could be really useful in case of a crisis. What kind of added value they might automatic case.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, this
I don't know
analysis.
If Stefan is online, maybe. No, I can't see him. Okay.
Maybe I will add something to what Alessandro just said. Initially, we were planning a different type of exercise. And we really wanted to do something more integrated. And it was not only to ask different questions to the scientists and the civil protection. We wanted to make an exercise with a different logic in which the civil protection would have to take decisions based on the expert responses. And it would have been a sort of information real-time exercise. And the civil protection would have said, this data is not useful to me. I need this other data or this data in such a format, etc., etc. So we revised completely the objectives, unfortunately, because of the virtual environment. But this is something the community should probably develop, like more integrated exercises.
Auriel, you've had your hand in the air for a while. And then Benjamin.
Yes. Also, I think, yeah, I had just a stupid question at the end. Maybe I missed it because I don't know, maybe I was thinking about something else. But what's the conclusions in terms of were we able as a group of experts to give good uncertainties or to give to respond well to the crisis or not? Does this type of exercise is supposed to answer this question or not?
So to me, especially for the question related to the probability that something will happen, I would say that the results is that the group as a whole was made by people that have understanding also of the problem says that for this answer, the result is highly uncertain. So that's an answer as well. That's why I think it's important to see if this uncertainty range is useful or not. Because also another important thing is that we are not providing a very simple uncertainty distribution. So we are saying that the answer is uncertain, but our distribution of uncertainty is more skewed toward one end of the other. And so this is a way to let people start to think in a more uncertainty and probabilistic way, because I think that we pointed out a bit this morning on these days that sometimes we're providing, it's not easy to provide a value of uncertainty and how this is understood by the population. But if we're saying we're providing an uncertainty range that put us in probably in a better position, because we are saying that based on the current knowledge, we cannot give a very precise answer. So from my point of view, I think that the exercise highlighted this. I think that the uncertainty ranges sometimes were wide, but I would say that given all the problems that we had, virtual meeting, and also the topic, I think it's normal. Then the question is, where this information useful from the point of view of the civil protection? What would they do with this data? So that was what Julie was saying. That would be interesting.
Benjamin.
Thanks a lot, Alessandro, for your presentation of the results. It's always interesting to see that. I have some comments about the exercise itself, because we've done with you another exercise, so I have this experience. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if it was the same in the last exercise because I knew the volcanoes much more, but I feel that the background on the volcano was not enough to answer correctly the seed questions. This is it's a volcano. I've never worked on it, even if it's in France. And yeah, I had some very large uncertainty on the seed questions. So that would be my, yes.
Can I make a confession there? We actually realized last night that we'd prepared some material more than a year ago that we'd forgotten we had, that we were supposed to give you, which included a table of statistics for the last half century on typical lava flow lengths, typical volumes, typical durations of eruptions, all the data you needed to be able to understand or answer those questions with a little more insight. And that was supposed to be part of the material we were going to give you in the setup session, when you look at the maps and the data and prepare yourself for the seeds. And yeah, hands up, we forgot we had it, and it resulted in probably the poor performance in some of those seed questions, which we based on that database. So yeah, that was a error.
We had some logistical issues, so we're sorry for that, but yeah.
Yeah, I have another comment. I think also that the target questions during the exercise were a little more ambiguous than the ones we have in Quito. And I think they were not in the typical framework. We work in an event tree framework. So in this case, the question were a little farther from that framework. So I would say that if we want a response from a scientific group, including people from outside, it's better to use an event tree like structure, because even though you don't give them the percentage, you give them some indications about the volcano during the event tree, because the event tree has the information about the volcano. So that would be my two comments on the seed question and on the target question. But thanks a lot. It was very interesting to do that exercise.
Thanks. Now, I think that I will just say one thing that maybe Andy could comment more. As Andy said at the beginning, there was the specific focus on this very unlikely event, and so some of the questions were designed to address some problems, real problems that might have occurred and are of the direct relevancy for civil protection officers. So I think that it was a bit out of normal event-trees, but also because the event was out of normal activities. I don't know if Andy, if you want to add something more.
I think it was a bit of a new spin and an objective for an expert elicitation, which we kind of got forced into doing because of having to reorganize it in this virtual way. But I don't think that's a bad thing, because it could be a way of defining a new direction to use and take expert elicitation with all this excellent feedback to improve it for potential future use. There's Nicola with his hand up, and then we're getting close to the end of this session. So Nicola.
Yes, especially for you, Julie, the beautiful eruptions there. I had a feedback yesterday and a new feedback now. Yesterday, when I go to bed, I was completely disappointed due to the fact that I was not really expert for Python de la Fournaise. I was completely down. So today I think your work, your expert elicitation, Alessandro, is quite amazing for pedagogy. I explained, I saw 2 or 3 solutions, or it could be very useful for people who are coming from outside. I mean, every year, Aline give a course for policemen who are coming in Réunion. Every year, there are about 100 new policemen in Réunion and 100 policemen who are going out of Réunion. So after the presentation of Aline, maybe she could make a very, very small expert elicitation to show them that it's not easy to do. It's not an easy thing to manage an observatory. But it's also very pedagogic for the OVPF team. Because yesterday, I was completely lost, but I think if all the observatory team have done the same exercise, maybe plenty of them were lost also. And I think it's a very good exercise in order to make a new view of what happened at the observatory. Because today it's a little bit not easy, but it's usual to make the prognostic of where the new eruption will go on. It will go, of course, several times or most of the time inside the enclave, but nobody knows how it will be managed tomorrow if it happened in the middle of the Plaine des Palmistes, middle of the Plaine des Cafres or on the Tampon. And I imagine the big work you did with Aline in order to make a simulation of the future. And this future is maybe real, it's maybe wrong. And I think it could be a very big advantage to get some people who ask this kind of question before it occurs. So I think it could be declined in different kind of expert elicitation for different public.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, thank you for this comment. Yeah, no, I totally agree, and I can add that, of course, as you said, these expert elicitation are very flexible for very different environments. I can cite that Willis has done some for nuclear power plants. He has done now one for the effect of this pandemic on the. So yeah, it's I think I agree, because it forces you to think more deeply about what you are judging a sure event or an unsure event, how wide should be the uncertainty on that specific event, which I think that especially from my point of view, it's important to have this concept of quantifying the uncertainty among all what we say, especially concerning volcanic hazard assessment and risk assessment, because sometimes a number without a precise uncertainty range might be a bit ambiguous and might not tell all the story behind that specific data. So I agree, and thanks for this comment.
I see that Valerie KL has entered into the discussion that wouldn't it be interesting to compare the outcome of both strategies, event tree versus elicitation, on the same group with the same questions? So that's an interesting direction to evolve. But Amy has been putting loads of really good commentary into the discussion. So Amy, I wonder if you'd care to turn on your microphone and sort of sum up your observations. Hi.
Hi, nice to see you. I think it's really, really interesting, and I've really enjoyed participating, even though I know almost nothing about Python de la Fournaise. I know more now, so that's helpful. Yeah, I think there's lots of really interesting things you could explore with the data set that you've got and with the kind of answers to the seed questions. The way that there's lots of different methods now for expert elicitation. There's the Sheffield method and the Delphi method as well, and the Cook method that gets used a lot in volcanology. So comparing some of the different bits and pieces of those, I think might be quite interesting in terms of how, particularly how you use it in a crisis, because that's one of the more challenging contexts, I guess. And I think if one of the challenges with elicitation, I guess, is putting it in context and getting people to understand the results. So I'm kind of curious how well the civil defence, for example, how useful they would find results that are probabilistic, for example. Some civil defence like that, some don't. I mean, there's loads of things I could talk about. I've done a lot of work on the psychology side of this, so that's where a lot of my experience comes from. And I think one of the things that struck me about the seed questions was that some of them were things that people could know. And when I've done seed questions before, there's always been an effort to make sure that people will not know the answer to the seed questions, so that you're testing how good they are at guessing something and not how good they are at knowing something necessarily. So that was kind of interesting, but also quite useful because you could then compare and see how people do across different categories of question as well. Yeah, and I suppose the reason I asked the question in the chat about the model is particularly how long it takes the flow to get to places. That's why I was. Would you rather use a numerical model where you kind of understand what the rationale is going into it, what the equations are going into it, or would you use elicitation where you don't necessarily know what people's rationale is for the answers that they're giving? And that's one of the critiques that I have heard made, particularly by some of the very experienced USGS folks, of elicitation, is that it's a black box. You don't know what people's reasoning is behind the answer that they give. And that makes it harder sometimes to explain the results. Not always, but sometimes. Whereas with a model, at least you have some vague idea of where it's coming from. And again, you can compensate for that because you can have a discussion and establish what the reasoning is, which is harder to do in a bigger group. But that's I suppose the other thing that I would ask is whether there's how the number of experts taking part affects it, because that again can be quite an interesting, and is something that the elicitation literature looks at in quite a lot of detail.
Regarding your last question, I'll answer very quickly. So the number of experts might influence the results in the sense that if you're having a lot of experts, very well calibrated experts, then what could happen is that the weights assigned to each expert will be smaller, because if you have a lot of experts, then of course the weights assigned will be smaller. So this could affect the final results, but that's the case if you're already selecting very well calibrated experts. Of course, there have been other cases that I think you might know, many people know, in which expert elicitation have been used among a very large audience to select a very restricted number. So in this case, of course, people who participated here are all considered potentially very well calibrated experts, but in other cases, in other contexts, this might not be the case. So yeah, that's I think how the number of experts could influence the results, the weight that each expert gains after the process.
Oriel, you've got your hands up, but as moderator, with us overrunning by 7 minutes already, you'd better close us down.
Well, it's interesting.
Patrick?
Yep.
I don't have the little yellow hand on my computer. I don't know why. But if I just to just a reflection on the role of the knowledge we can have of the Piton de la Fournaise. I understand you have considered the condition parameters that are close to those of the 2007 eruption. I think it's quite correct, of course, because it's the biggest we have. But for my part, I know quite well Piton de la Fournaise volcano, and given the geographical location of the eruption, I have considered parameters that I think could be those of an eruption in this area. That's to say, for example, an higher rate of magma emission than in 2007, and a more difficult progression of the lava flows because we are in an inhabited area, the different parameters like that. And in fact, this, I think, should introduce a bias, but is it a bad prediction of the effect of this type of eruption? Or where is the best expert prediction, and therefore, what is the point of such an exercise, really?
So the point I think is since with the target question we are trying to give assessment of what is not known, the major aim is to find those experts that are statistically less probable that they are wrong, so that they could more easily estimate correctly the uncertainty of something that is not known. So we are not seeking the best expert, because we are dealing with something that is highly uncertain a priori, we know that. So the major aim in this sense is that we are seeking, and that's why we need to have a sufficient amount of seed question, well designed, well calibrated. It's not easy, as you've seen, because this could be statistically meaningful if an expert is less likely to be wrong on that set of questions, because that could be translated to the target question, so the problem under investigation. So that's basically the idea behind that, and I don't know if this partially answer what you were asking.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
Better begin to move on before the moderator tells me off. There's a very quick item to tidy up at the end of this on behalf of Eurovolc and Lara Sandri, who's joined us this afternoon as part of Eurovolc work package 12. I've uploaded it to the discussion area so that you can download it and use it yourselves. And I'll just quickly screen share to show you what this is all about.
We don't have to do the photo.
Once we finish this session, which is overrunning. Full screen mode. So as part of Eurovolc Work Package 12, Lara has been putting together these questionnaires on Google Docs, which are designed to gather data, information to assess how such exercises as we've done together this week are received and how they can be improved. There are 4 versions, one in English, one in French, one in Spanish, one in Italian. So you can pick your home language and be comfortable. You click on the link there and the Google Docs document will open, and you can fill it out. It took me about 10 minutes to fill it out. The first page is over here. It's basically your data, your name, your email. It's aimed at all participants in the exercise, organizers and players. So the organizers will be filling it out from their perspective. And if the 27 players could fill it out as well, that would be very useful. One, for the Eurovolc database, and two, to add to the feedback that we can get to help to improve this exercise if we choose to evolve it and do it again in the future. So as you step through the pages, there's the next level of pages is some general information about the exercise. So this is the exercise that we did. The main thing over here was the exercise organized within a research project. Yes, and it was part of the ANR Lava/Eve project. So that's the response to put in there. And then there are a series of, I think, about 8 pages, which take you through questions such as this, asking you, for example, what sort of information was provided. So this will be the information we gave you in the reports. So the quality of the graphics,